Dr. Mercer, the future of the human project rests with you now.
We followed the protocols.
They called him a monster, but what they found in his brain shook the entire medical world. A boy who could feel what others couldn't, hear what no one else could, and save lives, not with medicine, but with empathy. But the question is, can the very thing that makes him special also destroy him? Stay with us, because this true inspired story will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about emotion, memory, and what it truly means to be human. Don't forget to subscribe if you believe some stories deserve to be heard, especially the ones the world tried to forget. Eli Warren knew the art of becoming invisible. In the halls of Chester Middle School, he walked with his head low, shoulders hunched, hoodie pulled tight over his face. Most days, no one spoke to him. On the rare days someone did, it was usually a whisper behind his back, or a muttered word that stung more than silence ever could. "Monster," someone hissed once in gym class. He heard it. They thought he didn't. The scar was impossible to miss. It started just above his left eyebrow, twisting down like a jagged river through his cheek, stopping near the edge of his jawline. It looked like a burn, but it wasn't. It wasn't from an accident or surgery. He had been born with it. Doctors had shrugged, called it congenital scarring, something they couldn't explain but didn't worry much about. Other kids, though, they worried. They feared. At 7, he'd been banned from a birthday party because he might scare the younger kids. At 10, he was pushed down the stairs by a boy who swore Eli's face gave him nightmares. By 13, Eli stopped looking people in the eye altogether. Still, he went to school. Still, he sat through classes, even though he never raised his hand. His notebooks were filled with more drawings than notes, sketches of faceless figures, shadowed woods, oceans that stretched beyond the edge of the page. Sometimes he drew himself, with the scar erased, just to remember what it might feel like. He never told his mother about the worst of it. Maggie Warren knew more than he let on. She watched how he flinched at the sound of laughter, how he tensed when someone walked behind him. She noticed the long sleeves, even in summer, the way he scanned every room like a soldier stepping into enemy territory. Maggie worked nights at the diner off Route 17, cleaning tables and pouring coffee for truckers and late-shift factory workers. She came home smelling like fryer grease and exhaustion. But every morning, she packed Eli's lunch, left little notes in his bag. "You're braver than they know," or "Smile when it feels right, not when they expect it." She didn't ask questions. Not yet. That morning in late October had started like any other. Eli sat at the back of English class, eyes down, trying to disappear into the rhythm of Shakespeare. The teacher had paired him with Amanda Brooks for a 2-person reading. She hesitated just for a second before sitting next to him. That second was all it took for Eli's stomach to turn cold. They were reading a scene from Macbeth. Amanda read loudly. Eli's voice barely left his throat. He could feel it again, that heaviness. Not his own, but Amanda's. Sadness, sharp and familiar, pressed in around him. Her hands trembled slightly. No one else seemed to notice. That was the worst part. No one else ever noticed. After class, he walked quickly to the bathroom and locked himself in a stall. He sat on the closed toilet seat, breathing hard, trying to push the weight away. He didn't know why this kept happening. It wasn't new. He had always been sensitive, as his mother called it. But lately it was getting worse, stronger. He felt other people's emotions before they spoke, sometimes even before they entered the room. And not just feelings. Sometimes he knew things, dark things. He tried to shake it off, washed his face, looked in the mirror. The scar stared back, but beneath it, his eyes looked older than they should. Like he had lived more lives than a boy his age should have to. At lunch, he sat alone, as always. At the far table near the vending machines, he nibbled at his sandwich. The noise of the cafeteria grew louder, sharper, until it felt like a storm in his head. Laughter turned shrill. Arguing voices cut like glass. And then it happened. A tray clattered. A girl screamed. 2 boys were shoving each other near the center of the room. One of them hit the floor with a dull thud. Eli felt it, the pain, the fear, before it even happened. It crashed over him like a wave. He stood too fast. His vision swam. Then everything went dark. When Eli opened his eyes, the world was blurry and too bright. Fluorescent lights hummed above him. The smell of bleach and floor wax filled his nose. A nurse hovered nearby, checking his vitals with a distracted glance. He realized he was lying on a thin cot in the nurse's office. A folded blanket pulled up to his chest. "Hey there, Eli," the nurse said without much warmth. "You passed out in the cafeteria. Just rest a bit. Your mom's on her way." He didn't say anything. His mouth felt dry. His head still buzzed with noise, not from outside, but from something deeper, an echo of fear that wasn't his own. It clung to him like smoke after a fire. The nurse offered him a paper cup of water and left the room. Eli stared at the ceiling, heart pounding slowly back to normal. He wished he could explain what happened, that it wasn't low blood sugar or exhaustion or heat, that it was something inside him, something that lit up when other people felt too much. But how do you explain that? How do you say, "I felt it before it happened," without sounding crazy? The door creaked open. Maggie stepped inside, breathless and red-faced. Her dark brown hair twisted into a messy bun, eyes wide with worry. She looked like she'd run all the way from the diner. "Eli!" Her voice cracked as she rushed to him. "Baby, what happened?" "I'm fine," he mumbled, though he wasn't. He sat up slowly. "I just got dizzy." "Dizzy?" Maggie's eyes scanned his face like she was trying to see through the words. "The school called and said you fainted. They said it might be stress." He shrugged. She crouched beside him, lowering her voice. "Eli, has this happened before? Be honest with me." He hesitated. He wanted to lie, to say no, but her eyes, soft, tired, pleading, made him falter. "Kind of," he admitted. "A few times. At home, mostly just pressure in my head, like there's too much noise." "What kind of noise?" "I don't know. Not sound noise. People noise." Maggie didn't answer right away. She sat back on her heels and looked at him like she was searching for a map on his face. He looked away. She took a slow breath. "Okay," she said gently. "We're going to figure this out. I promise. No more pretending it's nothing." He nodded, grateful and ashamed all at once. He hated worrying her. She already worked herself into the ground. Adding him to her list of problems felt like betrayal. The nurse returned with a form and a tight smile. "He's stable, no fever, no signs of concussion, but he should go home and rest." Maggie signed the paper quickly. On the way out, she kept a hand on Eli's back like he might vanish if she let go. The walk home was silent at first. Eli kept his eyes on the cracked sidewalk. The autumn wind picked up, dry leaves scraping across the pavement. "You want to talk about it?" Maggie finally asked. "No." "Okay," she said, and she meant it. Maggie never pushed. She waited. When they reached their apartment above the old laundromat, Eli went straight to his room. The door clicked shut behind him. Maggie stood in the kitchen for a moment, staring at nothing, then reached into the cabinet and pulled out the old binder labeled Eli's Medical. It was thick with bills, doctor notes, insurance denials. She hadn't opened it in over a year. She flipped through it slowly. The birth records, the pediatrician notes, the referral for MRI she couldn't afford, the bold red stamp, not covered, out of network. Maggie's throat tightened. That had been the beginning. The moment she'd decided to stop chasing answers they couldn't afford. She'd chosen survival over understanding. Now, sitting at the worn kitchen table, she realized that maybe that choice had cost more than she thought. In his room, Eli sat on the floor beside his bed, sketchbook in his lap. He didn't draw anything. He just stared at the page. The pencil hovered above it like a question he didn't know how to ask. He felt tired, but not from the fall. It was something deeper, something that had been building for months. Years, maybe. Something was wrong. Not with the world, with him. And whatever it wasn't going away. Maggie still remembered the fluorescent buzz of the hospital delivery room, the soft, rhythmic beep of machines, the way everything had smelled like antiseptic and warm plastic. Eli had come into the world quietly. No screams, no wailing, just a soft, gasping breath and then wide, unblinking eyes that looked directly into hers. The doctor had said he was healthy. His lungs were strong. His heart was perfect. But there was the mark. At first, they thought it was a birthmark, an angry streak down the left side of his face, pale and ridged like scar tissue. The nurses didn't say much, but their eyes lingered too long. One whispered something to the pediatrician, who stepped in for a closer look. "You may want to see a specialist," the doctor said gently. "It's likely cosmetic, but given its placement, we should rule out any cranial abnormalities." Maggie nodded, dazed and exhausted, cradling her newborn. She had no idea what cranial abnormalities even meant. All she saw was her baby, beautiful, fragile, and entirely hers. They handed her a pamphlet before she left the hospital. It was full of words like imaging, diagnostics, and genetic consultation. It might as well have been written in another language. The last page listed several specialists in the St. Louis area and a ballpark estimate of the initial evaluation cost, 2 by 300s. She never made the call. At the time, Maggie was 23, recently laid off from her cashier job and living with her aunt in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment. She had no insurance and barely enough money for diapers and rent. The hospital visit itself had been covered by a state assistance program, but anything beyond that, scans, specialists, follow-ups, was on her. For a few months, she told herself she would save. She stashed $10 bills in a coffee can, skipped meals, pawned a necklace her mother had given her. But then the car broke down, and the landlord raised rent. And the coffee can emptied, just like every other emergency stash she'd tried to keep. Eli didn't seem sick. He smiled. He fed well. He hit all his milestones. The scar was just there. People stared. Some asked questions. Maggie answered them with a practiced smile. "It's a birthmark. Doctors say he's perfectly fine." She almost believed it, but there were signs. Little things. Eli would wake from naps screaming, clutching his head, but he was too young to explain why. He flinched at loud sounds. He cried when someone nearby got hurt, even if he hadn't seen it happen. One time at a grocery store, a woman collapsed several aisles over. Eli, sitting in the cart, had started crying seconds before. Maggie wrote it off as coincidence, or maybe sensitivity. Some kids were just more empathetic, right? At his 3-year checkup, a new pediatrician raised an eyebrow at the scar. She asked about imaging. Maggie lied and said they'd already done scans. Nothing unusual. The lie sat like a stone in her stomach for days. She told herself it didn't matter. Eli was bright. He was sweet. So what if he didn't like crowds? So what if he was a little different? Different was okay, until it wasn't. By the time Eli started kindergarten, the questions got louder. Other parents asked if it was contagious. One teacher hesitated before allowing him into the class photo. Kids were cruel in the way only kids can be. Fearless, blunt, echoing the ugliness they heard at home. Maggie heard whispers. Freak. Demon child. Scarface. She wanted to pull him out, to wrap him in blankets and keep him hidden from a world that didn't deserve him. But she also knew that wouldn't help him learn to live in it, so she taught him to be strong, to be quiet, to endure. Now sitting at the kitchen table years later, staring at that old pamphlet with the specialist list, Maggie felt the shame bloom fresh in her chest. She had chosen to wait, to hope it would go away on its own, to tell herself love was enough. But love, it seemed, couldn't see inside a boy's skull. And maybe it wasn't enough anymore. The next morning, Maggie stood in the kitchen holding a mug of cold coffee she had no intention of drinking. The apartment was still quiet. Eli was asleep, curled on his side like a question mark, his hand resting beneath his cheek, that scar catching the early light like a thread of silver. She watched him from the hallway for a long time before she turned away. At the table, she opened her laptop, a refurbished model that sometimes needed a slap on the side to wake up, and typed in a search. Pediatric neurology specialist, Missouri, low cost. The results came fast and blurry. Ads for insurance plans, pages asking for money up front, wait lists that stretched for months. She clicked through them anyway, jaw tight, scrolling like she was digging for air. Eventually, she found a small clinic affiliated with St. Louis University Hospital. There was a name she recognized from years ago, Dr. Rick Halden. His profile said he specialized in rare neurological conditions in children. No mention of prices, just a phone number and a request form. She filled it out with trembling fingers. When the confirmation email came through 10 minutes later, her breath hitched. They had an opening next Tuesday, a cancellation maybe. Or maybe the universe had finally decided to give her one small break. She didn't care which. She printed the directions and tucked them into her purse like a secret. Eli stirred late that morning. When he entered the kitchen, still wearing the same oversized hoodie from the day before, he looked like a ghost of himself, pale, quiet, eyes puffy from restless sleep. Maggie set a plate in front of him, toast, scrambled eggs, apple slices. He didn't touch it. I made an appointment, she said softly. He didn't look up. For what? For you, for your head, for whatever's been happening. I told you I'm fine. You're not fine, Eli. His jaw tensed. He stared at the table. I'm not saying you're broken, she added quickly. I'm saying we need help understanding, so we can make it better. What if it can't be better? Then we still try. He didn't argue, but he didn't agree either. That was enough for her. They spent the weekend in a kind of fragile peace. Maggie packed a small bag with essentials, medical papers, an extra hoodie for Eli, snacks he might not eat. She checked the car twice, made sure the gas tank was full. The tires were old, the brakes squealed, but it would get them to St. Louis. Sunday night, she found herself sitting on Eli's bed after he'd fallen asleep, watching the slow rise and fall of his back. She whispered, "I'm sorry I waited." She didn't expect an answer, but she said it anyway. On Monday, she called off work. Her boss grumbled but didn't argue, and double-checked their insurance status. It was still spotty, barely covering emergencies, but the clinic had mentioned sliding scale fees. It might work. It had to. Tuesday morning came gray and cold. The highway stretched before them like a ribbon of dull silver, and the city crept closer with every mile. Eli stared out the window the whole way, earbuds in, music off. Maggie kept her eyes on the road, knuckles white on the wheel. Her heart felt like a drumbeat against her ribs. Fear, hope, regret, all tangled together. This was it. No more pretending. No more hoping it would pass. They were finally going to find out what was really happening inside her son's mind. And she wasn't sure if that terrified her more than the not knowing. The waiting room smelled like disinfectant and lemon polish. The walls were painted a soft artificial blue, the kind meant to calm nerves but doing little to mask the anxiety in the air. Maggie sat next to Eli, her purse clutched tightly on her lap, knuckles white. Eli didn't speak. He barely moved. Across from them, a mother flipped through a parenting magazine while her toddler babbled beside her. Somewhere down the hall, a child cried, sharp and short, like a balloon popped under pressure. Eli flinched. When the nurse finally called his name, Maggie stood too fast. Eli followed more slowly, his footsteps heavy. The nurse led them down a long corridor with glossy floors and numbered doors. At the end of the hall was an office with frosted glass and a plaque that read, Dr. Richard Halden, Pediatric Neurology. Dr. Halden stood as they entered. He looked to be in his late 40s, tall but slightly stooped, with salt and pepper hair and eyes that studied more than stared. He wore a gray sweater over his shirt, the sleeves pushed up, as if he were always halfway to rolling up his metaphorical sleeves too. Eli, he said with a gentle nod. And Maggie, I'm Dr. Halden. Thanks for coming in. His voice was warm but not forced. It didn't carry the clinical tone Maggie had come to expect from specialists. There was something steady about him, something quietly kind. Eli sat in the chair farthest from the doctor's desk. He pulled his hoodie tighter around his head, eyes fixed on a spot near the window. Maggie cleared her throat. Thank you for seeing us. I know it was last minute. I had a cancellation, Halden said, but I'd have made room either way. That answer surprised her. She nodded, unsure of what to say next. Halden turned his attention to Eli without moving closer. I read through some of your history. Sounds like you've been through more than most boys your age. Eli didn't respond. Halden smiled gently. I won't ask you to talk right now. You don't have to explain anything if you don't want to. But if it's okay, I'd like to run a few tests. Just observation today. No machines, no needles. Sound fair? Eli shrugged, the faintest motion of one shoulder. Halden took it as a yes. Over the next 30 minutes, he asked Eli to complete a few basic tasks, balance tests, hand-eye coordination, reflex checks. He noted Eli's responses without judgment, occasionally asking soft questions. Does this make you dizzy? Or do you feel pressure here? Eli said little, but he followed instructions. Maggie watched from the corner of the room, heart tight in her chest. Every time Eli swayed or hesitated, she felt like she was holding her breath. When the tests ended, Halden pulled his chair closer, not to Eli, but to Maggie. Has he ever described what he feels? He asked quietly. Not just physical symptoms, but emotional ones. Maggie hesitated. He says he hears noise, not sounds exactly. People noise. Halden nodded slowly as if that made sense. Has he ever reacted strongly to being near someone else who was upset? Maggie blinked. Yes, all the time. He picks up on things before they happen. Now Halden leaned back, hands folded. His gaze drifted toward Eli, who was staring at the carpet, lost in his own fog. Kids like Eli, Halden said carefully, sometimes experience what we call heightened affective perception. Their brains don't filter emotional input the same way others do. It's rare, but not unheard of. Are you saying he's empathic? Maggie asked, unsure whether to scoff or cry. I'm saying he might be experiencing the emotions of people around him almost as if they were his own. For a moment, the room felt quieter. Even Eli looked up. Halden's voice dropped just slightly. It's not supernatural, it's neurological. And it's overwhelming, especially for someone so young. Maggie stared at the doctor, something between fear and hope rising in her chest. Finally, someone was putting words to what she had always suspected. Eli's voice broke the silence, small and raw. So I'm not crazy? Halden turned to him, meeting his eyes directly for the first time. Not even close. Maggie sat forward in her chair. Her fingers knotted together in her lap. So, what does that mean? Is it treatable? Dr. Halden exhaled slowly, choosing his words with care. We're still early in the process. What Eli is experiencing could be the result of several overlapping neurological responses, some developmental, some sensory. But the way he described it, the people noise, that's what caught my attention. He reached into a drawer and pulled out a tablet, tapping through a few screens before turning it to face her. There's a region in the brain, here, he pointed to a glowing scan of a brain, called the anterior insula. It plays a role in emotional awareness, empathy, interoception. In some rare cases, this region shows hyperactivity in children with heightened emotional perception. Maggie stared at the screen, understanding maybe half of what he said. Are you saying it's a brain disorder? Not a disorder, he said firmly. Not yet, maybe not ever, but it's unusual and worth looking into. She hesitated. What kind of tests? An fMRI, possibly a full neurological assessment, including cognitive mapping, and a PET scan if the initial results suggest structural anomalies. Nothing invasive, but, well, comprehensive. Maggie's throat went dry. She could feel the old fear creeping in. How much would that cost? Halden didn't answer right away. Instead, he tapped his fingers on the desk, slow and thoughtful. If we go through the hospital directly, the total package might be substantial, somewhere in the ballpark of $8,000 to $10,000, depending on imaging time. Maggie's face paled. Her stomach sank. That was more than she made in 4 months, maybe 5. But, he added quickly, I'm part of a grant-funded research group affiliated with the university. We focus on underrepresented pediatric cases with potential neurodevelopmental implications. If Eli qualifies, the scans would be covered. No charge to you. Maggie blinked. Why would he qualify? Because he's different, and because cases like his are extremely rare. You'd need to consent to anonymized data being used for research, and we'd have to document everything thoroughly, but there'd be no exploitation, no experiments, just understanding. Before she could answer, a sharp knock interrupted the conversation. The door opened without waiting. A tall man in a crisp white coat stepped in, clipboard in hand. He wore expensive glasses and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Rick, the man said, didn't realize you had a patient. Grant, Halden replied, voice neutral. We're just finishing up. Dr. Grant Mercer stepped inside anyway, glancing at Maggie, then at Eli, who shrank slightly in his chair. This the boy you mentioned at the faculty meeting? Mercer asked, eyes never leaving Eli. I didn't mention him, Halden said calmly. Not yet. Well, if he's what you think he is, Mercer continued, now flipping through the clipboard as if he already owned the rights to the boy's story, you'll want him enrolled in our ongoing trials. The neuroplasticity group just got a new round of NIH funding. We could fast-track everything. Maggie stiffened. Trials? Halden stood slowly. Grant, this is a private consultation. Mercer chuckled. Relax, I'm only offering options. If there's something significant here, it deserves proper attention. Real documentation, full access. Eli shifted in his seat. The air had changed, gone sharp and clinical. No, Maggie said, her voice steady. We're not signing him up for anything today. Mercer raised an eyebrow. Of course, just think about it. He turned on his heel and left without another word. When the door clicked shut, Halden turned back to Maggie and Eli. His jaw was tight now, his calm demeanor tested. I'm sorry about that. Grant means well, sometimes, but he's more institutionally minded. Is he part of your team? Maggie asked. He's head of the research division, but that doesn't mean he gets to decide what happens in this room. Eli looked from one adult to the other, uncertainty clouding his expression. Is he going to do something to me? No, Halden said, turning to face him directly. Not unless you want him to, and I won't let anyone touch you without your and your mother's full consent. That's a promise. Maggie nodded slowly, heart pounding in her chest. She didn't understand everything yet, but she understood this much. Whatever was happening with her son, it was real, it was rare, and now other people were starting to see it too. The pediatric observation wing was quieter than Eli expected. He'd imagined bright walls covered in cartoon murals, the noise of children laughing or crying, a kind of nervous energy in the air. Instead, the hallway outside his temporary room was hushed, lit by warm, indirect lighting, with soft instrumental music playing somewhere overhead. His room had a single bed, a low window that overlooked the hospital garden, and a chair that folded out into a cot for Maggie. She sat there now, flipping absently through a magazine without reading it. She hadn't said much since they were admitted that morning. Neither had he. Eli stood at the window, one hand pressed to the cool glass. Outside, the wind stirred leaves across the stone paths, but he didn't watch the trees. He watched the people, patients, doctors, nurses, moving like distant ghosts, each carrying invisible weight. He could feel them. Not their thoughts, not clearly, just impressions. A swirl of worry from a father pacing outside, the low hum of grief in a woman holding her phone with trembling fingers, the flicker of hope in a nurse walking with a toddler in fuzzy socks. And then for a moment, the weight shifted. It was lighter, curious. Someone nearby was thinking about dinosaurs and lemonade and birthday cakes. Eli turned. A girl stood at his door. She looked about his age, maybe a little younger, with a faded red beanie pulled low over her ears and hospital socks with rubber ducks on the soles. Her arms were thin, too thin, but her eyes were bright, blue and wide and unafraid. "Hi," she said, stepping into the room without waiting for permission. "I'm Em." Eli blinked. "Hi." "You're new," she said, matter of fact. "They put new kids in this wing when they think you're interesting. Are you interesting?" "I don't think so," she grinned. That's exactly what an interesting person would say. Maggie looked up, startled by the sudden voice, but when she saw the girl, her face softened. "Hi there. I'm Emily Carver," the girl said politely, "but everyone just calls me Em." "Nice to meet you, Em," Maggie said, offering a small smile. "I'm Eli's mom." "I figured." Eli sat down on the edge of his bed. Em wandered over and sat cross-legged on the floor, like she'd known him for years. "You look like you don't sleep much," she said, studying him. He shrugged. I don't either. Chemo makes my brain feel like it's full of bees." She poked her temple. "Buzz, buzz. But sometimes I listen to the nurses at night. They tell stories about patients like they're characters in a TV show." "You don't seem scared," he said. "I am. But it's not loud in here, you know?" He tilted his head. "What do you mean?" She pointed to her chest. "In here, the sadness. It's not loud right now." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Something in her gaze told him she knew. Em leaned back on her hands and looked up at the ceiling. "Sometimes when I'm around people, I get dizzy. Not because I'm sick. Just like I'm picking up extra weight I'm not supposed to carry." Eli's heart skipped. "Does that happen to you?" she asked, without looking at him. He nodded slowly. "Yeah." "Cool." She smiled again, but it wasn't silly or dismissive. It was the smile of someone who'd been waiting a long time to find someone who understood. When a nurse came to walk Em back to her room, she waved without ceremony. "See you later, Eli. Don't disappear." After she left, Maggie looked at her son. "She's something." Eli was still staring at the spot where Em had sat. "She's quiet," he said. "You mean she talks a lot?" Maggie chuckled. "No," Eli said, "not that kind of quiet. Of the other kind, the kind that helps." Maggie didn't understand what he meant, not fully, but Eli did. The second time Em showed up, she brought a deck of cards and a stuffed penguin named Clarence. She walked in like she owned the place and sat cross-legged on Eli's bed without asking. "I thought maybe you needed company," she said. "Clarence thinks so too." Eli didn't protest. He moved aside to make room. Clarence, faded from too many washes, took a seat between them. They played a quiet game of war, neither of them keeping real score. Em talked the whole time, telling stories about the nurses, the lunch lady who smuggled extra Jell-O cups, and the time she threw up on a resident's shoes. Eli listened, occasionally smiling. He still hadn't said much, but with M, silence didn't feel awkward. It felt like space, room to breathe. "Do you know why you're here?" she asked suddenly, flipping a card. Eli hesitated. "They think something's wrong with my brain," M nodded. "Mine too, but in a more explodey way." He blinked. "Cancer," she said, like it was the most boring word in the world. "Leukemia. It came back a few months ago. So now I'm back here. Round 2. Eli swallowed. "Are you scared?" "Sometimes," she said. "Mostly I'm tired and angry. And sometimes okay. Depends on the day. The drugs make everything fuzzy." He looked down at his cards. "You ever feel like you're not really in your body?" she asked. He nodded. "Sometimes it's like I'm everyone else, all at once." "Yeah," she said, and didn't question it. They played another round in silence. Outside, clouds thickened over the city. The light in the room dimmed, soft and gray. Eli felt calm, not like the calm of being alone, but the calm of being with someone who didn't need you to pretend. "I think you're like a sponge," Em said eventually. "A sponge?" "Yeah, you soak up people. Not in a creepy way, just you take in what they're feeling. That's why it gets so heavy. Oh, you're carrying other people's stuff." Eli looked at her. "Is that what's happening to you now?" Em tilted her head. "You mean, do I feel lighter when you're around?" He nodded. She smiled, slow and a little sad. "Yeah, it's weird. The nausea doesn't get worse when I talk to you. And I don't get the sharp kind of tired. Just the soft kind." They didn't say anything for a long time after that. That night, Maggie noticed something strange. When Eli came back from the common area, where he'd been sitting with them for most of the evening, his posture was looser. His shoulders weren't as tight, and for the first time in weeks, maybe longer, he ate a full dinner without pushing the food around first. "You okay?" she asked cautiously. "Yeah," he said, and meant it. Later, when she thought he was asleep, she heard him whisper something in the dark. "She doesn't hurt as much when I'm there." Maggie sat in the chair by the window, hands wrapped around a lukewarm cup of tea. She didn't respond, didn't even let him know she'd heard, but the words clung to her like mist. The next day, the nurse told her Emily had slept through the whole night for the first time in over a week. The room where they brought Eli the next morning was colder than the others. Not by much, but enough to notice. The walls were bare, aside from a single monitor and a wide observation mirror that Eli knew, instinctively, had people behind it. Dr. Halden waited for him inside, already seated, a folder open in his lap and a cup of coffee steaming beside him. He smiled when Eli entered, but didn't stand. "Thanks for coming in today," he said. "This won't take long. No machines yet. Just some basic response testing. Sound good?" Eli nodded and took the chair opposite him. Maggie sat near the door, arms crossed, her eyes never leaving her son. Halden handed Eli a set of noise-canceling headphones. "I'm going to play a few audio clips, conversations mostly. I want you to tell me how they make you feel. Not what you hear, but what happens in here." He tapped his chest. Eli hesitated, then slipped the headphones on. The first voice was soft, a woman reading a grocery list. Eli frowned. "She's anxious. Not because of the groceries, something else." Halden scribbled a note. The second voice was louder, a man explaining insurance policies. Eli's brow furrowed. He's angry. He's trying to sound calm, but he's mad at the person he's talking to, like they're wasting his time. More notes. The third clip was a child crying. Eli flinched. He pulled the headphones off, breath hitching. "I can't. He's scared. Alone. His chest hurts." Halden looked up sharply. "His chest?" Eli nodded. Like he can't breathe right. Like something's pressing on it." Halden stood and walked to the computer, clicking through files, his brow furrowed. That clip was taken from a therapy session. The child has asthma, had a mild attack during the recording. Maggie's eyes widened. Halden turned back to Eli. "You didn't just hear the emotion. You felt the symptom." Eli's hands were shaking. He didn't know if it was from fear or fatigue. "I think I'm broken," he whispered. "No," Halden said gently. "You're different. And your brain processes emotion and physical sensation in ways most people can't. It's like the filters are missing." Eli stared at the floor. It hurts. I believe you. Halden sat back down. Eli, what you're experiencing, some people would call it heightened empathy. But this goes beyond psychology. This is neurological, possibly even structural. You mean it's my brain? Yes, and if we're right, the pathway responsible for your responses might be something we haven't documented before. A kind of emotional synesthesia, where your brain translates what others feel into physical signals in your own body. Eli didn't speak, neither did Maggie. Halden leaned forward, voice calm but firm. This is why I want to do imaging. The PET scan, the fMRI. We need to see it, not just guess. I think you're carrying more than any person should, and if we don't map how, it might start hurting you more. Eli swallowed hard. Will it go away? I don't know, Halden admitted. But if we understand it, we might be able to help you live with it. Before Eli could respond, a sudden wave of dizziness hit him. He gripped the sides of the chair. Eli? Maggie was at his side instantly. He didn't answer. The room felt crowded all of a sudden, like it was packed wall to wall with invisible people all shouting at once. Stop, he whispered, eyes shut tight. Stop, stop, stop! Halden moved toward him. What is it? What are you feeling? Everything, Eli gasped. Everyone! Maggie looked around, panicked. There's no one here. Yes, Eli choked out. There is, behind the glass. One of them, someone's crying. Someone's, he clutched his chest. He lost his daughter. He's thinking about it right now. Halden turned toward the mirror, his face pale. Eli curled in on himself, breathing hard. Maggie knelt beside him, holding his hand. Halden crouched on the other side. It's okay, Eli. You're not alone. You're not crazy. We're going to help you carry this. But even as the words left his mouth, Halden wasn't sure who he was trying to convince, Eli, Maggie, or himself. Maggie followed Dr. Halden out into the hallway, her voice low but sharp. You said it wouldn't be too much, that he wouldn't be pushed. Halden paused, hands still on the doorframe. I didn't expect a reaction that intense. He was in pain, she said, stepping closer. Not upset, not overwhelmed. Pain. You saw it. I did, Halden admitted, his voice steady. Which is why I need to do more. Maggie blinked. More? He turned to face her fully, his expression unreadable but not cold. What happened in there? It wasn't just emotional transference. Eli physically manifested someone else's grief, with specificity, timing, detail. And you think more tests will help him? She snapped. I think not doing them might be worse. Maggie crossed her arms, trying to keep her voice from shaking. He's a kid. He's my kid. He's not a subject in your paper. Halden held her gaze. I know that. You don't know anything about him. I know he's special, Halden said quietly. And I don't mean that in the empty way people say to feel better. I mean neurologically, functionally, he is unlike anyone I've ever studied. That doesn't make him yours to study. I'm not trying to own him, Halden replied, gentler now. I'm trying to make sure this thing inside him doesn't destroy him. Maggie looked away, arms tight across her chest. Halden's voice softened further. When my daughter was 10, she started getting migraines. Doctors called it stress. They gave her pills. They told us to limit screen time and monitor her sleep. He stopped, letting the memory settle. 6 months later, she had a seizure in the middle of the night. It was a tumor. We didn't catch it in time. Maggie glanced at him, eyes softening just slightly. She died in a hospital bed with strangers around her. I sat in that room afterward and told myself 1,000 times, if just one person had looked deeper, had asked the right questions, we might have had a chance. His voice caught for the first time. He cleared his throat. I promised myself I wouldn't let another child fall through the cracks just because their symptoms were hard to explain. Silence stretched between them. A cart squeaked by at the end of the hall. The fluorescent lights above them buzzed faintly, like static in the background. Maggie finally spoke, her voice quieter. And if there's nothing you can do, if this is just how he is, then I want him to understand it. I want you to understand it, too. So he doesn't grow up thinking he's broken. She looked down the hallway toward Eli's room. He already thinks that, she whispered. Halden nodded once. Then let's prove him wrong. Back inside, Eli sat on the edge of his bed, Clarence the penguin tucked under one arm. His breathing had steadied, but his eyes were glassy. He looked up as they entered. Maggie walked over and sat beside him. You okay? He shrugged. I didn't mean to freak out. You didn't, she said, brushing the hair from his forehead. You reacted. That's different. Halden crouched in front of him. Eli, I want to help you learn how to turn the volume down on everything you're feeling. But to do that, I need to see what's going on inside. That means scans, tests, but only if you're okay with it. Eli looked between the two of them, then down at his hands. If it means I can stop hurting all the time, he said, then yeah, do the scans. Maggie reached for his hand, squeezing it. Halden stood. We'll schedule them for tomorrow. As he left the room, he paused by the door, glancing back just once. In all his years, in all the patients he'd seen, he'd never encountered someone quite like Eli Warren, and something deep in his gut told him this was only the beginning. Dr. Grant Mercer stood in front of the observation mirror, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the boy inside the room. The feed had already ended, the audio muted, but he'd watched enough. Eli Warren wasn't just unusual, he was unprecedented. Have the scans been scheduled? He asked without turning around. A young resident behind him nodded. Tomorrow morning, first slot, Dr. Halden's overseeing it personally. Mercer smirked. Of course he is. He tapped his fingers along the window's edge. I want full access to the imaging data, and get me the mother's file. Insurance, employment, legal history, everything. The resident hesitated. That's not protocol, sir. Halden already said the case is protected under patient consent. Mercer turned, his expression cool and crisp like stainless steel. If Dr. Halden wants to play savior, that's his cross to bear. I want results. This could be the case that unlocks 5 years of funding, 10 even. But if Halden gets in the way, Mercer said, voice flat, I'll have legal pull the research authority clause. The boy is showing signs of neurological anomaly with systemic effect. That places him under review by the board, whether Halden likes it or not. The resident nodded, shrinking back. Mercer adjusted his coat and left without another word, his shoes clicking sharply down the tile corridor. Meanwhile, 2 floors below, Eli stood barefoot in the hospital garden. The space was small, just a rectangle of green surrounded by glass and concrete, but it felt bigger than his room. There were benches, a fountain that no longer worked, and a few stubborn trees clinging to fall leaves. Em sat on the bench, knees tucked under her, drawing something on a napkin with a red pen. You're early, she said without looking up. I couldn't sleep. Pre-scan jitters? Maybe. She held up the napkin. It was a rough sketch of Eli, big hoodie, solemn eyes, a little too thin. You made me look sad, he said. You always look sad. He shrugged. Em folded the napkin and tucked it into her pocket. Do you think the tests will change anything? I don't know, Eli said. Dr. Halden says they'll help figure out what's wrong. What if nothing's wrong, she asked. What if you're just built differently? Eli looked at the sky. It was pale and cloudless, but the wind smelled like coming rain. I don't want to feel everything all the time, he said. It's like drowning. Em nodded. But maybe you're meant to swim deeper than most. They sat in silence for a while. The garden didn't hide the sounds of the hospital entirely, monitors beeping faintly, a distant overhead announcement. But for now, it was quiet enough. Em leaned her head on his shoulder. Her body was warm, but fragile, like she was already halfway to leaving. You calm it down, she murmured. The noise. When you're near, it's not so loud. Eli didn't know what to say, so he said nothing. He just sat there, letting her rest, watching a single yellow leaf detach from a branch and drift slowly to the ground. For a moment, the weight in his chest eased, and it felt like peace. The room that held the scanner felt colder than any Eli had been in before. Not just the temperature, but the way the air settled, clinical, precise. It smelled faintly of plastic and metal, like something that had never belonged to people in the first place. Maggie stood just outside, wearing a lead apron, her eyes locked on her son as the techs prepped the machine. You'll feel a slight vibration, the technician explained. The scanner is loud, so we'll put headphones over your ears. Just stay still. It won't hurt. Eli nodded, though his chest was already tight. Dr. Halden appeared beside the monitor, offering a small, reassuring nod. We'll be watching the whole time. If anything feels wrong, just say so. We stop immediately. You're in control here, okay? Okay, Eli said, lying back on the narrow table. As the table slid into the hollow center of the scanner, the world narrowed. The walls of the machine were inches from his face. He closed his eyes. A low hum started, rising into a pulsing rhythm like some massive mechanical heartbeat. He tried to breathe steadily, counting between each inhale, each exhale. His fingers twitched. Then the noise changed. Something shifted, not in the machine, but in him. He felt a flicker of warmth behind his eyes, like static, then color. He wasn't sure if it was a dream or if the scanner had unlocked something in his brain, but suddenly he wasn't in the room anymore. He was elsewhere, floating, weightless. All around him was light and sound, but not chaotic. It was organized, layered. Like a symphony of emotions, each note distinct: grief, hope, fear, love. He could see them, like threads, weaving through the space around him. Then he saw people, not clearly, but as impressions. Blurs of color and sound tethered to those threads, a woman with sorrow curling around her like smoke, a boy laughing while fear clung to his shadow, a nurse humming softly, her kindness glowing like firelight. Eli moved through them, not walking, not flying, just being among them, and then he felt her. He turned toward the presence before he even realized what he was doing. Her thread was pale blue and flickering. It pulsed weakly but steadily. There was sadness, yes, but also a fierce kind of joy. Defiance. She knew her time was short, and yet she chose to burn brightly, not fade quietly. She saw him, even here, wherever here was. "You're not supposed to be in this part yet," her voice echoed, distant but warm. "I didn't mean to come," he whispered. "You're further in than they expected." "Where is this?" M's image, soft, flickering, smiled. "This is underneath. The place you go when you stop trying to block it all out. I can feel everyone." "You always could," she said, "but now you're starting to listen." The machine rumbled louder in the physical world, but Eli no longer noticed. Colors burst around him, sensations crackling like fire and ice. There were memories, some his, some not. He felt the grief of a father who'd lost a daughter, the rage of a woman waiting for a diagnosis she feared would end her life, the joy of a child ringing the chemo bell. It was too much. It was everything. He cried out, but not in pain, in awe. Outside the scanner, Maggie jumped. "Is he okay?" Dr. Halden watched the screen carefully. The brain activity was off the charts. Entire regions were lighting up in tandem, emotional centers, memory hubs, even pain receptors. "This isn't just empathy," Halden murmured. "It's integration." "He's not moving," the technician said nervously. "But the levels," Halden raised a hand. "Give him one more minute." Inside, Eli felt himself break open, not shatter, just open, like a wall inside him had collapsed, and suddenly everything flowed through him instead of into him. And with that shift came clarity. He wasn't drowning, he was channeling, and for the first time, he wasn't afraid. The scan results spread across 4 monitors in the diagnostics lab. Each screen lit up with vibrant, pulsing colors, regions of the brain firing in synchronized chaos. Dr. Halden stood at the center of it all, arms folded, eyes narrowed in disbelief. "He shouldn't be alive with this kind of neural activity," whispered the lead technician. Halden ignored the comment. He leaned closer to the display showing the anterior insula and the mirror neuron system. Both were glowing like wildfire, along with unexpected bursts in the limbic system and prefrontal cortex. Entire circuits were engaged: empathy, memory, emotion, sensory integration all at once. No child's brain had ever recorded this kind of simultaneous activation, not even close. He reached for a notepad, started scribbling notes. He'd seen remarkable cases, he'd studied savants. But Eli wasn't recalling music or calendar dates. Eli was absorbing people, feeling them, living them, and somehow, not breaking. Just then the door slammed open. Dr. Grant Mercer strode in, a printed report in hand and an expression like a hammer. "Explain this," he said, slapping the paper down onto the desk beside the monitors. Halden didn't flinch. "It's the scan data. I know what it is. I want to know how the hell it's possible." Halden straightened. "It's not a malfunction. We ran the protocol twice. This is real." Mercer's eyes gleamed, equal parts fury and hunger. "Do you know what this means?" "Yes," Halden said cautiously. "It means we're sitting on a breakthrough that could redefine effective neuroscience. Empathic cognition, somatosensory resonance, cross-subjective mapping, all of it." Halden frowned. "He's a child," Mercer snapped. "He's a case, a historic one, and he needs to be moved into a research protocol immediately." "No, you don't get to decide that. I'm his consulting physician," Halden said, voice hardening, "and I say he's not ready. You're protecting your own legacy. I'm protecting a kid who nearly blacked out under the scanner because no one bothered to ask how it felt. Mercer stepped closer. This is bigger than feelings. No, Halden replied. It isn't. That's exactly the point. It's all about feelings, and he's drowning in them. Mercer stared him down. The board will overrule you. I've already submitted a preliminary claim of research significance. If you don't sign off, they'll pull you off the case. Halden didn't answer. The monitors behind them continued to glow, painting both men's faces in waves of color. Downstairs, Maggie paced the hallway outside Eli's room. He was still resting, curled under a blanket, Clarence the penguin tucked under his arm. The nurses said he was stable but exhausted. Whatever had happened in that scanner had left him more than tired. It had emptied something from him, and she could feel it, the way a mother feels when her child has changed in a way no one can see. She turned when she heard footsteps. Dr. Halden approached, slower than usual. "What did you find?" she asked. He didn't sugarcoat it. "More than I expected." "Is it dangerous?" "Not yet, but if he keeps going this deep without guidance, it could be. His system isn't just feeling emotion, it's mimicking it, even physical symptoms. His brain doesn't recognize the difference between what's his and what's someone else's." Maggie pressed her hand to her mouth. "We need time," Halden continued, "to teach him boundaries, to help him control it." She looked up sharply. "But Dr. Mercer wants him in some kind of program." Halden's silence confirmed it. Maggie's eyes flared. "No, I'm trying to delay it," Halden said, "but you need to be prepared. They'll come at you with paperwork, with promises of access and treatment and support. They'll make it sound like help. But it's not." "No," he said. "It's containment, control. They'll use words like research advancement and contribution to science. But what they really mean is they want him under glass." Maggie swallowed hard. "Not my son." Halden nodded. "Then we'll fight." And he said we like he meant it. When Eli opened his eyes, the light in the room was low. Afternoon had turned to evening. The soft hum of the machines was steady, the only sound aside from the occasional beep of the monitor by his bed. He felt empty, not tired exactly, but as if something had poured through him and left the space hollow. Dr. Halden sat nearby, scribbling in a small leather-bound notebook. He looked up as Eli stirred, and for once didn't reach for a monitor or a chart, just folded the notebook shut and leaned forward. "How do you feel?" Eli blinked, his voice raspy. "Weird." "Can you describe it?" Eli thought for a long moment. "Like I borrowed too many coats and forgot which one was mine." Halden nodded slowly. "That's more accurate than you think." Eli glanced at him. "Did it work? The scan?" "Yes, more than I expected." He hesitated, then added, "I've never seen anything like it. Your brain responds to emotional input the way others respond to sound or light. But with you, it doesn't stop at feelings. It becomes sensation, experience. A memory." Eli didn't answer. Halden continued. "When you were under, you said something. You told the technician, 'She sees me.' Were you talking about M?" Eli nodded. "She was there, I think. Not in a dream way, like, she's part of the place I go." Halden exhaled. "That might have been a projection, or—" He stopped himself. "Actually, maybe that's the wrong word. Maybe she's simply someone whose presence resonates with you. Strongly enough to cross lines we didn't know could be crossed." Eli looked away. "I don't want them to put me in a program." Halden stilled. "I heard them," Eli said. "Outside the glass. One of them was scared of me. One of them wanted to use me. Like I'm a puzzle." Halden leaned forward. "You're not a puzzle, and you're not property. You're you. That's why I'm here." Eli met his eyes. "Do you believe in destiny?" Halden paused. "I believe in moments that change us, and people who shape what comes after." "Maybe this is mine," Eli said softly, "but I don't want it to be in a cage." Halden didn't respond for a long time. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out something small, an old bronze coin, worn thin at the edges. "My daughter gave this to me before her last surgery," he said. "She told me it was lucky. I didn't believe in that, but I carried it anyway." He placed it in Eli's hand. "I think she'd want you to have it." Eli held the coin gently, like it might vanish. "Thank you." Upstairs, Maggie was seated in the family consultation room, where the windows didn't open and the couches were made for pretending to be comfortable. She sipped a cup of tea that had long since gone cold. A soft knock came, and a woman stepped in. Blonde, well-dressed, professional. A smile that didn't quite touch her eyes. "Mrs. Warren? I'm Dr. Claire Fornell. I work with Dr. Mercer." Maggie tensed. I'm not signing anything. Dr. Fornell laughed lightly. No pressure. I'm just here to talk, offer support, let you know what's available. Maggie said nothing. Fornell took a seat across from her, crossing one leg over the other. Eli's results are astonishing, and we want to make sure he has access to every opportunity for care and development. Specialized teams, resources, education support, financial security. Maggie narrowed her eyes. In exchange for what? Just cooperation, participation in a research partnership. You'd retain legal guardianship, of course, but we'd guide treatment, structure, and public communication. Maggie laughed, sharp, cold. So you want to own his story? We want to protect him, Fornell said smoothly, and the world he might change. Maggie stood. The only person protecting him is me. And if you or Mercer come near my son again with a contract in your hand, I swear I'll burn every bridge in this hospital. Fornell stood, her expression never cracking. Of course. You're his mother. You're scared. I understand. No, Maggie said. I'm not scared. You are. Because you don't understand what he is. And that means you can't control it. She walked past the woman out into the hallway, pulse pounding. She had no idea how she was going to protect Eli from all of this. But she knew this much. They'd have to go through her first. When Eli opened his eyes, the light in the room was low. Afternoon had turned to evening. The soft hum of the machines was steady, the only sound aside from the occasional beep of the monitor by his bed. He felt empty, not tired exactly, but as if something had poured through him and left the space hollow. Dr. Halden sat nearby, scribbling in a small leather-bound notebook. He looked up as Eli stirred and for once didn't reach for a monitor or a chart. Just folded the notebook shut and leaned forward. How do you feel? Eli blinked, his voice raspy, weird. Can you describe it? Eli thought for a long moment. Like I borrowed too many coats and forgot which one was mine. Halden nodded slowly. That's more accurate than you think. Eli glanced at him. Did it work? The scan? Yes, more than I expected. He hesitated, then added, I've never seen anything like it. Your brain responds to emotional input the way others respond to sound or light. But with you, it doesn't stop at feelings. It becomes sensation, experience, memory. Eli didn't answer. Halden continued. When you were under, you said something. You told the technician. She sees me. Were you talking about Em? Eli nodded. She was there, I think. Not in a dream way. Like, she's part of the place I go. Halden exhaled. That might have been a projection, or he stopped himself. Actually, maybe that's the wrong word. Maybe she's simply someone whose presence resonates with you, strongly enough to cross lines we didn't know could be crossed. Eli looked away. I don't want them to put me in a program. Halden stilled. I heard them, Eli said, outside the glass. One of them was scared of me. One of them wanted to use me. Like I'm a puzzle. Halden leaned forward. You're not a puzzle, and you're not property. You're you. That's why I'm here. Eli met his eyes. Do you believe in destiny? Halden paused. I believe in moments that change us, and people who shape what comes after. Maybe this is mine, Eli said softly, but I don't want it to be in a cage. Halden didn't respond for a long time. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out something small, an old bronze coin worn thin at the edges. My daughter gave this to me before her last surgery, he said. She told me it was lucky. I didn't believe in that, but I carried it anyway. He placed it in Eli's hand. I think she'd want you to have it. Eli held the coin gently like it might vanish. Thank you. Upstairs, Maggie was seated in the family consultation room where the windows didn't open, and the couches were made for pretending to be comfortable. She sipped a cup of tea that had long since gone cold. A soft knock came and a woman stepped in, blonde, well-dressed, professional, a smile that didn't quite touch her eyes. Mrs. Warren, I'm Dr. Claire Fornell. I work with Dr. Mercer. Maggie tensed. I'm not signing anything. Dr. Fornell laughed lightly. No pressure. I'm just here to talk, offer support, let you know what's available. Maggie said nothing. Fornell took a seat across from her, crossing one leg over the other. Eli's results are astonishing, and we want to make sure he has access to every opportunity for care and development, specialized teams, resources, education support, financial security. Maggie narrowed her eyes. In exchange for what? Just cooperation, participation in a research partnership. You'd retain legal guardianship, of course, but we'd guide treatment, structure, and public communication. Maggie laughed, sharp, cold. So you want to own his story? We want to protect him, Fornell said smoothly. And the world he might change. Maggie stood. The only person protecting him is me. And if you or Mercer come near my son again with a contract in your hand, I swear I'll burn every bridge in this hospital. Fornell stood, her expression never cracking. Of course, you're his mother. You're scared. I understand. No, Maggie said. I'm not scared. You are, because you don't understand what he is. And that means you can't control it. She walked past the woman, out into the hallway, pulse pounding. She had no idea how she was going to protect Eli from all of this. But she knew this much. They'd have to go through her first. The hallway smelled different that morning. Sterile, yes, always. But beneath the bleach and plastic, Eli caught something else, something sharp and metallic. Fear. It wasn't his, but it soaked the air like humidity before a storm. He felt it before the nurses said anything, before the monitors beeped, before anyone ran. He just knew. And when the crash team rolled past, he already knew who it was for. M. He stood frozen in the middle of the pediatric wing, one hand pressed to the wall for balance. A nurse brushed past him shouting orders. Another followed, pushing a crash cart. The doors at the end of the hallway slammed open, then shut again behind them. Eli couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. Inside his chest, something twisted. He could feel her panic, not loud, not screaming, contained, like she knew the limits of her body and had accepted them, but feared the end anyway. Clarence. She'd left him in Eli's room 2 nights ago. Keep him until I'm back, she'd said. He likes you. He hadn't even thought to give him back. Maggie came around the corner just as Eli's knees gave out. She caught him, easing him gently to the floor. What is it? She asked, frightened. M, he whispered. Is she okay? Eli shook his head, eyes wide and full of something older than fear. She's fading. Maggie held him close, cradling his head against her shoulder. For a moment, she didn't ask anything else, because in her gut, she knew he wasn't guessing. He felt it. Later, when things quieted, Dr. Halden came to find him. M was stable, he said, for now. But the relapse was aggressive, unexpected. Her blood counts had crashed overnight. She was sedated, surrounded by tubes and wires. She's fighting, Halden said, but she doesn't have many rounds left. Eli didn't speak. He stared out the window, holding Clarence in both hands. Halden sat beside him. You've felt others before, but this is different, isn't it? Eli nodded. She's not noise, she's music. Halden blinked. I mean it, Eli said. When I feel people, it's like static or shouting. But M, she's rhythm, even when she's scared. You connect to her. She connects to me, Eli said softer now. She's the only one who never made me feel like I was broken. Halden looked at the boy sitting beside him. No longer just a patient, no longer a case file. Do you want to see her? He asked. Eli hesitated. Will it make her worse? No, Halden said. I think it might help. A nurse escorted him down the hall and into a quieter wing. Low lights, heavier doors, softer beeping. The kind of place where noise had been negotiated into silence. M's room was dim. She looked small in the bed, smaller than usual. Her beanie was gone, revealing a smooth, pale scalp. Her skin looked thin, almost translucent. Machines whispered beside her, each beep like a ticking clock. Eli sat in the chair by her side. He didn't speak, didn't cry. He just held her hand gently, like it might slip away. And inside him, something opened again. Not the flood from before. Not the overwhelming rush of every stranger's sadness. Just her. He felt the shape of her dreams, the color of her memories, the pieces of herself she was trying to keep for just a little longer. He didn't try to fix her. He just listened. And somewhere, deep in that quiet place between fear and faith, she felt him too. Her lips barely moved. But he heard it anyway. Don't let them turn you into a ghost. He blinked, unsure if she'd actually said it, or if he'd just caught the echo of her thought. Either way, he nodded, because he knew what she meant. They both lived at the edge of something most people never saw, a line between noise and silence, life and memory, and she was slipping toward one side, but he was still here, and he had work to do. Maggie stood in Dr. Halden's office with her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Her voice was low, steady, but sharp enough to cut glass. I want him discharged. Halden didn't look up from the report in front of him. That's not an option right now. He's not safe here. He's safer than he would be outside, and you know it, too. Maggie leaned forward, eyes burning. There are agents sniffing around my son like he's government property. Mercer sent a woman to my face with a folder full of contracts dressed up like care plans. I know, Halden said quietly. He's a child, she continued. He's my child, and I'm not going to let them lock him in a lab because they're afraid of what they don't understand. Halden finally looked up. You think I don't want to protect him? That I'm not trying? Then try harder. He sighed, long and tired. Maggie, if we pull him from care without protocol, they'll file an injunction, a court order. And the moment he's outside this hospital, he's vulnerable, not just to Mercer's people, to the press, to fear, to curiosity. Right now, the only thing standing between him and exploitation is this room. Maggie didn't answer, because deep down she knew he was right, but that didn't make her feel better. Shrugged. Meanwhile, Eli stood by M's bedside again. The room hadn't changed much since yesterday, except now the air felt thinner, like the light itself had grown hesitant. She hadn't spoken since the night before, but Eli could still feel her. Her thread, the one only he could sense, was dimmer, fragile, as if it might flicker out at any moment. I don't know how to help, he whispered, but I think I can try. He took her hand again, both of his palms wrapping around her thin fingers, and he closed his eyes. At first, there was only silence. Then, the pressure came, a wave of cold, then heat, then pain, sharp and immediate, behind his eyes, in his ribs, like something was trying to burst outward from the inside. He didn't pull away. He leaned in, and suddenly, he was somewhere else again. But this time, not floating, falling. He fell through memories that weren't his, a birthday cake with only 3 candles, the sound of rain on a window, a hospital bed much earlier in her life, when she still had hair, when her mother still visited, and then the pain. A surge of nausea so intense it buckled his spirit. His lungs burned, his stomach twisted. He felt the chemicals, the rot, the exhaustion. She had carried this for so long, alone. And now, he was carrying it with her. His body convulsed in the chair beside her bed. A nurse noticed the movement through the glass and rushed in. Halden, arriving seconds later, froze at the door. Eli was gripping M's hand so tightly now his knuckles had gone white. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His breathing was shallow. Eli, Halden barked, rushing forward. But Maggie, just behind him, grabbed his arm. Wait! Halden turned. He's hurting himself. He's helping her, Maggie whispered, eyes wide. Because M's monitor, once slow and unstable, had steadied. Her oxygen level ticked upward. Her pulse returned to rhythm. Not a miracle, but a moment of balance. Eli trembled in the chair. Tears streamed down his face, but his expression wasn't one of pain. It was one of peace, as if something had passed through him and left something lighter behind. Halden crouched beside him. Eli, can you hear me? Eli opened his eyes slowly. She's not afraid anymore, he whispered. And then he passed out. The light filtering through the blinds was soft and golden when Eli opened his eyes again. He blinked, slow and groggy, feeling like he'd swum through something heavy and thick. His limbs ached, not in the way they did after tests, but deeper, like something inside his bones had cracked open and slowly healed over. Maggie was at his side instantly. Hey, take it slow. He tried to sit up, but his muscles trembled in protest. What time is it? You've been out almost 14 hours, she said, brushing hair from his forehead. You scared me. I didn't mean to, he murmured. I know. There was silence for a moment. Maggie looked like she hadn't slept either. Then Eli asked, is she okay? Maggie hesitated. Dr. Halden will explain. He's on his way. Eli tried to read her face, but she was holding something back, something she didn't understand herself yet. Just then, the door opened. Dr. Halden walked in, carrying a tablet and wearing an expression somewhere between wonder and wariness. You're awake, he said. That's good. How's Em? Eli asked immediately. Halden didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled up a scan image on the tablet and handed it to Maggie, letting her see first. These are Em's vitals from the night before last, when she coded. This, he said, swiping to the next screen, is from this morning. Maggie stared. Her counts are rising? Significantly, Halden said. White blood cells, platelets, oxygen saturation. Her kidneys are stabilizing. Even her heart rhythm has improved. Eli sat up straighter. That's good, right? Halden nodded slowly. It's Unprecedented. We were preparing for a final stage care plan. Now she's improving faster than we can explain. Maggie looked at Eli. Did you do this? I didn't heal her, he said, shaking his head. I just took part of it. Let it pass through me. Halden crouched beside the bed. Eli, I need to be honest with you. What you did was extraordinary and dangerous. If we hadn't intervened when we did, your nervous system might have shut down. But it worked, Eli said softly. Yes, Halden admitted. Somehow it did. Before they could speak further, there was a knock at the door, and then it opened without permission. Dr. Mercer stepped inside, flanked by 2 hospital board members in tailored suits and unreadable expressions. Halden stood immediately. This is a private recovery room. I'm invoking the Institutional Protection Clause under Section 7B, Mercer said coldly. Given the physiological anomalies exhibited by the patient and the unrecorded transmission of biological change to another patient, the board has authorized temporary transfer of care. Absolutely not, Maggie said, standing now. Mercer ignored her. Eli Warren is a subject of unprecedented neurological function. What occurred last night was not healing. It was a data event. The fact that it produced a measurable change in another patient's vitals constitutes a shift from clinical to investigational jurisdiction. Halden stepped in front of him. He's a child, Grant, not your experiment. You don't get to stand on ethics when you've withheld data from oversight, Mercer snapped. We know he's been exhibiting response patterns outside protocol for days now. You've been sitting on it. I was protecting him. You were delaying us. And now it's out of your hands. Maggie's voice cut through the room like a blade. If you touch my son, I'll sue this hospital into the next decade. Mercer turned to her, smile cold. You'll be offered a full legal review, and the board will file for temporary custody under emergency research protections. You won't win. Halden looked between Mercer and the suits behind him, then to Eli, who sat quietly, watching, not afraid, but calm. I won't let this happen, Halden said. You're already too late. And with that, Mercer placed a folder on the bedside table and walked out. Maggie picked it up with shaking hands. It wasn't just a transfer of care. It was a petition for federal guardianship of her son. Maggie stared at the petition in her hands as if it were written in another language. Every word, clinical, cold, rehearsed, felt like a quiet declaration of war. A war against motherhood, against autonomy, against them. This isn't happening, she whispered, but it was. Dr. Halden stood near the door, silent now. The moment Mercer walked out, the weight in the room had shifted. Like a countdown had started, and none of them knew how much time was left. Eli watched his mother from the hospital bed. He could feel it. Not just her fear, but her rage, her love, her quiet calculations already racing behind her eyes. They're going to take me, aren't they? He asked. Maggie turned quickly. No, not if I can stop them. You might not be able to. Eli, he shook his head. You don't have to lie to me, not now. Halden stepped forward. He's right. Maggie looked between them, heart pounding. So what do we do? There was a long pause before Eli answered. We leave. Maggie blinked. What? We run. Eli, that's not... Why not? He interrupted. What's the alternative? Let them take me? Lock me in some research lab until they figure out how to copy whatever I am? Maggie's voice cracked. I can't keep you safe out there. You need care. Medicine. Monitoring. I need freedom, Eli said quietly. I'd rather die free than live hooked to wires in a room with two-way mirrors. Halden didn't speak, but his silence wasn't disagreement. You know what they'll do, don't you? Eli asked him. Halden nodded slowly. Yes. Then help us. Halden looked at Maggie. She was still shaking her head, not out of doubt, but fear. Real fear, not for herself, for what this decision would make her become. You'd be risking your license, she said to Halden. I'm already risking more than that. Eli looked at him. You don't owe us anything. Halden met his eyes. I do. I've been walking this hospital for years thinking I was saving people, but I wasn't saving you. And that's what matters now. Silence stretched between them. Maggie sat down hard, the petition still clutched in one hand like it might combust. They'll monitor my badge access, Halden said. And the cameras. If we're going to do this, it has to be tonight. Quiet. Fast. Maggie swallowed. Where would we go? I have a friend, pediatric neurology, private practice, North Vermont, off-grid. She owes me. I'm not letting you take the fall for us. Halden offered a wry smile. You'd be surprised what I'm willing to burn down for a kid who reminds me of everything I lost. Eli stood now, weak but determined. Then let's do it. Maggie took his hand. Are you sure? No, he said. But I want to be sure, and that's enough. Later that night, after most of the lights in the hospital dimmed, Halden returned with a wheelchair, a set of scrubs, and a visitor pass he'd borrowed from the staff lounge. Eli dressed slowly, his body still aching, but his mind was clearer than it had ever been. Maggie packed only what she could carry: medication, M's drawing, the bronze coin, and Clarence the penguin. They moved like shadows, Halden leading them through staff corridors and maintenance stairwells, avoiding security hubs and automated doors. No one noticed. Not yet. At the loading dock, a nondescript gray SUV idled with the headlights off. Halden opened the back. Eli turned to look back, just once, at the building where everything had begun, the place where he'd learned what he was and what he wasn't. Maggie whispered, "We don't have to go through with this." But Eli didn't move. He was still staring at the hospital. "No," he said softly, "we do." And then he climbed in. The road was long and mostly empty. Halden drove with both hands on the wheel, his eyes steady on the dark ribbon of asphalt stretching ahead. The SUV hummed quietly through the early morning silence. Maggie sat in the back with Eli, her hand resting on his knee as he leaned his head against the window, half awake. Outside, dawn had begun to stretch its fingers across the horizon, brushing the sky with strokes of lavender and ash blue. "We'll reach Vermont by late afternoon," Halden said, glancing in the rearview mirror, "assuming no one flags the car." "They will," Maggie said, "eventually. We've got time." She didn't respond. Eli stirred. His voice was soft, barely above a whisper. "Something's wrong." Maggie leaned forward. "What is it, honey?" He sat up straighter, his brow furrowed. "I can feel something. It's not near, but it's loud, like a siren in my head." Halden glanced back. "Is it pain?" "No, it's people. A lot of them. Panic, confusion, fear." Maggie looked out the window. "There's nothing out here but trees." Eli shook his head. "They're not here. It's farther, maybe miles, but I can feel it." Halden's grip on the wheel tightened. "You've never sensed emotions at that distance before." Eli nodded. "Something's changed." Halden's mind raced. Extended empathetic projection, emotional signal reach? None of it made sense. Not at this scale, not without proximity. "You need to rest," Maggie said gently, brushing his hair back. "You've done enough." Eli looked at her. "What if I haven't?" Silence followed. They drove for another hour before stopping at a gas station tucked behind a row of rusting farm silos. Halden filled the tank while Maggie took Eli inside for snacks and water. The clerk behind the counter barely looked up. A local radio station murmured in the background, a news segment just starting. Maggie froze. Security footage released from St. Martin's Pediatric Hospital shows a 12-year-old boy, Eli Warren, last seen under clinical observation for neurological anomalies. Authorities are asking for any tips. She reached across the counter and snapped off the radio. The clerk blinked. "Static," she muttered. She turned to Eli. "They know." He didn't look surprised. Halden returned moments later, saw their faces, and understood. "We need to change cars." "Now?" Maggie asked. He nodded. "We can't risk plates being scanned at a highway checkpoint." They left the station quickly, abandoning half the snacks in a rush. Behind the building, Halden led them down a gravel road into a grove where his friend had stashed a secondary vehicle, a beat-up pickup with more dents than paint. "No electronics," Halden said. "No trackers. She keeps it off-grid." They transferred their things, then drove north again, staying off the main highways. Fields gave way to forest. The air grew colder. Eli was quiet most of the ride. He kept his eyes shut, but Maggie could tell he wasn't sleeping. "Are you still hearing them?" she asked. He nodded. "It's like static from every direction, but certain things cut through, faces, screaming, crowds." Halden listened carefully. "Can you focus on one place? Narrow it down?" Eli's lips parted slightly. "There's a woman in a hospital bed. She's scared, not of dying, but of being forgotten." Maggie felt a chill crawl down her back. "She keeps saying a name," Eli added. "James, over and over." "Where is she?" Halden asked. "I don't know." "Can you feel her pain?" "Yes, it's like a blanket, heavy, but also familiar." Halden's brow furrowed. Familiar how? Eli opened his eyes. She feels like M. Different body, different story, but the same thread. You want us to drive toward the feeling? Maggie asked, eyebrows raised. Eli sat in the passenger seat now, eyes closed but alert, like he was listening to something no one else could hear. It's not just a feeling, he said. It's a pull. Halden glanced at him from the driver's seat. Can you guide us, or is it just noise? Eli shook his head. It's not noise. It's more like gravity. The closer we get, the clearer it becomes. Maggie crossed her arms. And what exactly are we hoping to find? I don't know, Eli said softly. But whoever she is, she's like me. I can feel it. Maggie looked out the window. Snow was beginning to drift across the treetops, melting on the windshield. They were far from anything now. No towns, no signs, just wilderness and power lines and the occasional hawk circling overhead. Do we trust this? She asked Halden. Halden didn't answer right away. We've already broken every rule, he said. And we're out of options. Maybe this is the road we were supposed to be on. Maggie exhaled slowly, then nodded once. Okay, but if I get even one bad vibe, we turn around. Eli gave a small smile. You'll feel it too, when we're close. They turned off the main road 20 minutes later, following a narrow path that curved around a wooded ridge and descended into a small valley. There were no signs, no houses, just snow-covered trees and a single-lane road barely wide enough for the truck. Eli sat up straighter. She's here, he said suddenly. Maggie looked around. Where? There. He pointed ahead, where the road curved around a steep embankment. As they rounded the bend, a small structure came into view, half hidden behind tall pine trees and buried in snow. It was an old church, stone and wood, long abandoned. The bell tower was missing its bell, and ivy had grown through the cracks in the stone walls. But the lights inside were on, flickering, alive. Halden slowed the truck. You're sure this is it? Eli nodded. She's inside. They stepped out into the cold, breath fogging in the air. The only sound was the crunch of snow beneath their boots. Maggie stayed close to Eli, one hand on his shoulder. If anything feels off, I'll know, Eli said. Halden pushed the church door open slowly. It creaked, loud and long, and revealed a surprisingly warm interior. Someone had restored it, at least partly. There were rugs over the old wood floor, a fireplace crackling on the far wall, and a single hospital bed tucked beneath a stained glass window. In the bed lay a woman, mid-40s, pale, eyes closed. Tubes and monitors surrounded her, but there was no sound of machines, only her breathing. And sitting beside her was a man, thin silver hair, dressed like someone who had once worn a suit but no longer believed in formality. He stood as they entered, startled but not angry. Can I help you? He asked. Eli stepped forward. She's calling, he said simply. The man's eyes widened. You feel it too? Halden stepped between them. Who are you? My name's James, the man said. She's my wife. Doctors gave up on her 2 years ago, said her brain was too damaged to respond. But sometimes, I feel her. I swear she's still in there. I don't know why. She is, Eli said. James blinked. How could you know that? Eli walked slowly toward the bed. Because she's been sending it out, like a lighthouse. James turned to Maggie, confused. Who is he? A kid, Maggie said, who should never have to carry what he does. But Eli wasn't listening anymore. He stood beside the woman now, hand resting on the metal bed rail. And in that moment, the feeling pulsed, so strong that all three adults felt it too, warmth, sorrow, a longing so deep it trembled like a tuning fork. She was alive, somehow, still here. And Eli had found her. The moment Eli touched the woman's hand, something shifted. Not in the room, not in the air, in him. It wasn't a flash or a vision. It was quieter than that. Like stepping into a room you didn't know was inside you. She was there. Not her body, not even her voice, but her presence. Like a candle flickering in a dark cathedral. I hear you, Eli whispered. The woman didn't respond, but the pulse of her presence warmed. A subtle wave, a heartbeat. Halden stepped forward. Eli, what's happening? I'm not sure, he said, but she's not asleep, not really. James, the husband, stood frozen near the doorway. She hasn't moved in almost 2 years, but I knew she wasn't gone. I felt her every night, like a whisper in my chest. Eli looked at him. You're not wrong. Maggie reached for her son's shoulder but stopped herself. His face had changed, not visibly, but his expression had softened into something ancient, something far too deep for someone his age. "She's not the only one," Eli said suddenly. Everyone looked up. "What do you mean?" Maggie asked. "She's not alone," Eli whispered. "There are others. I can feel them. Faint, distant, but real." "Other patients?" Halden asked. "No, not just patients, people. People who feel like me, different, scattered." James stared at him. "Like a network?" Eli nodded. "Like strings all stretched out over a map, some louder than others, some nearly gone, but still connected." Halden crossed his arms. "This can't be coincidence." "It's not," Eli said. "She's the loudest. That's why I found her. But there are more. They just haven't been heard yet." Silence. Then Maggie said what no one else dared to. "Do you think they're calling you for a reason?" Eli looked at her. And for the first time since this began, since the hospital, since since everything, he didn't look like a scared child. He looked like someone who understood. "Yes," he said. "I think they are." He turned back to the woman, whose chest rose and fell gently beneath the blanket. Machines clicked softly beside her. "I don't think this is about what's wrong with me anymore," Eli said. Halden stepped closer. "Then what is it about?" Eli reached into his pocket and pulled out the bronze coin Halden had once given him. He turned it over slowly in his palm. "I think I'm supposed to find them," he said, "and remind them they still matter." Dee. Outside the chapel, snow had begun to fall in thick, slow flakes. Inside, Maggie helped James make tea in the tiny kitchenette at the back. Halden stood quietly near the old pulpit, flipping through his notebook, processing everything in real time. "What if it's true?" he asked finally. Maggie glanced up. "That Eli's connected to people like this? That there's a pattern, something larger than just random anomalies," she exhaled. "Then we were never just running from something," Halden nodded. "We were running toward it." Back in the room, Eli sat beside the woman. Her name was Angela. He didn't know how he knew, he just did. Her presence was softer now, less panicked, as if being heard had calmed her. And in the distance he could feel another, farther this time. Not a scream but a hum, a boy, alone, buried under something heavy, grief maybe, or guilt. "I think I know where we go next," Eli whispered. Angela's hand, still resting in his, twitched. Just once, but enough. Eli smiled. "You're welcome." Night had fallen by the time they finished the tea. James had set out blankets and sleeping bags in the old choir room, offering Maggie and Halden a place to rest, but no one slept. Maggie sat near the fireplace, arms wrapped around her knees, eyes fixed on the flickering flames. Her son, her Eli, wasn't just different. He was meant for something, and that terrified her more than any needle or diagnosis ever had. Halden sat at the other end of the room, scribbling furiously in a worn leather notebook. Equations, sketches, fragments of thought. He looked less like a doctor and more like a man chasing a ghost. Eli paced in a quiet circle, one hand brushing against the old wooden pews as he thought aloud. "There's a boy," he said. "Younger than me, maybe 9. His signal is faint, not like Angela, not fear, just emptiness." Halden looked up. "Can you tell where he is?" Eli paused. "South, maybe near water, cold. I feel concrete, like tunnels." Maggie stood. "You want to go looking for a boy you've never met, in a city we don't know, based on feelings?" "Yes." Her voice rose. "Eli, this is not a game. These aren't just feelings. They're visions, pulls, risks. What if they're traps? What if we're walking into something designed to lure you in?" "They're not traps," Eli said, quiet but firm. "I can tell the difference. This boy, he's not reaching out. He's drowning." Halden set down the notebook. "Maggie, we've seen what he can do. What if these connections are part of something bigger, like a neurological mesh, a real-time emotional web?" Maggie shook her head. "I don't care if it's spiritual, scientific, or both. He's still a kid. He's still mine." Eli stopped pacing. "I'm still yours," he said gently. "But I'm not just yours anymore." Those words landed like a stone in Maggie's chest. She didn't respond, because deep down she knew he was right. Meanwhile, 3 states away, Dr. Grant Mercer stood alone inside the now empty chapel. The fireplace was cold. The bed had been stripped. The floor still carried faint indentations where a medical cot had stood. But most of all, the room felt different. He ran a hand along the wooden pew, frowning. "They were here," he said. The young agent beside him nodded. "Two witnesses in the nearest town say they saw a silver SUV yesterday. Matches the doctor's vehicle description." Mercer said nothing. He walked slowly toward the stained glass window. Behind the colored panes, night pressed against the glass like a curious child. "There was a spike," the agent added. "We detected an electromagnetic distortion 3 hours ago. Lasted only 20 seconds. Direction? South-southeast. Narrowband signal. Organic frequency. Probably the boy." Mercer smiled, not kindly. "Then it's working." "Sir? He's reaching out now. Without realizing it, he's sending pulses, emotional flares. The more he uses it, the easier he is to track." The agent hesitated. "Isn't that dangerous? He could overload." Mercer turned to him, voice calm. "Exactly. And that's when we bring him in." He looked around the room once more, then turned back to the door. "Mobilize a team. Send drones ahead of us. Have local law enforcement ready in every town south of here. What should I tell them to look for?" Mercer paused at the doorway. "A boy with too much empathy," he said, "and a woman willing to burn the world to keep him free." Back in the chapel, as Maggie lay awake, Eli crept to her side. He didn't speak. He just curled up next to her, head on her shoulder. She stroked his hair gently, and for a few minutes they were only mother and son, nothing else. "I'm scared too," he whispered. "I know," she replied, kissing his forehead. "But you're not alone." And neither was she, not anymore. They drove through the night in silence. The roads became narrower, more broken. Civilization seemed to fade behind them like a memory, replaced by thick forests and abandoned industrial zones, their skeletons rusting under moonlight. Eli sat in the back seat, leaning against the window, eyes closed. His breathing was slow, steady, but his mind was anything but. "I'm close," he whispered suddenly. Halden slowed the car. "Here?" Eli nodded, not opening his eyes. "There's something underground, metal, damp. It smells like old air." Maggie glanced at Halden. "He's never said that before." Halden nodded, pulling the SUV over near the entrance to what looked like a derelict municipal facility. A faded sign read, "Trinity Youth Behavioral Center, closed 2004. Chains hung from rusted gates, but they were broken, recently. "Someone's been here," Halden said. They stepped out of the vehicle cautiously, flashlights in hand. The cold bit harder here, clinging to the bones. Eli didn't seem to feel it. He moved toward the gate as if drawn by invisible thread. "It's beneath," he said. 3 levels down, in the dark." Maggie shivered. "Eli, are you sure about this?" He turned to her. "He doesn't even know he's still alive." That silenced her. They moved quickly now, down stairwells that moaned with every step, past peeling walls and rooms filled with the ghosts of old furniture. Spray paint, broken glass, mold. A place forgotten by everyone, except the one still trapped in it. By the time they reached the sublevel, Eli stopped. "He's behind that door." The steel door was half open, bent at the hinges like someone had forced their way through years ago. Beyond it lay a wide, windowless room lit only by a single emergency bulb flickering in the corner. At the center was a hospital cot, and on it a boy curled up, small, still breathing. "Oh my God," Maggie whispered. Halden rushed forward, checking vitals. Pulses weak, but steady, dehydrated, malnourished, but alive. "No IVs, no monitors," Maggie added. "How has he survived?" Eli stepped forward slowly, his voice soft. "Because he never gave up." The boy stirred slightly. Eli knelt beside him, placing a hand gently on his shoulder. In that moment, everything around them vanished. The cold, the fear, the rot. Eli closed his eyes and felt it all. A boy named Jordan, left behind when the center shut down. Staff vanished, files lost. No family came. No one searched long. He had hidden during the closure, too scared to leave. Then, he forgot how to leave. Jordan had survived on rainwater, broken vending machines, and hope, but hope had run dry long ago, until now. "I'm here," Eli whispered. "I see you." The boy didn't open his eyes, but he turned his head slightly, just enough. And for Eli, that was everything. He stood. "He's one of us." Halden looked up. "You were right." Eli nodded. "There are more. This is just one thread." Behind them, Maggie had tears in her eyes, but something else was there too. A sound, far away, but getting closer. Helicopter blades. The hum of helicopter blades thick in the air, growing louder by the second. Halden's eyes darted toward the stairwell. We're out of time. Eli didn't move. He stood next to Jordan's cot, calm, almost serene. They're not here for him, he said. They're here for you, Maggie breathed. The realization hit her like ice water. All this time, they weren't running from something. They were being pulled toward this moment. Eli turned to Halden. Take Jordan upstairs. He needs sunlight. He's been in the dark too long. What about you? I'll talk to them. No, Maggie said, stepping forward. If they see you, they'll see me, Eli interrupted. That's all I've ever wanted. Halden hesitated, then nodded. Then he gently lifted Jordan, who weighed almost nothing, and carried him from the room. Maggie stood with Eli. Her eyes shimmered. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. I know, he said, but maybe they do. The door at the top of the stairs burst open with a bang. Boots thundered down concrete steps. Flashlights cut through the dark like daggers. Then came Mercer, clad in a dark tactical coat, flanked by agents with weapons lowered but ready. He stepped into the room like a man who believed he'd already won. He stopped when he saw Eli. The agent stopped too. There was a moment, silent, breathless, where no one moved. Eli stood his ground. Dr. Mercer, he said. Mercer tilted his head slightly. So, this is where you've been hiding. I wasn't hiding, Eli replied. I was looking. For what? For the people you forgot. Mercer's jaw tightened. You don't understand what you are, he said, voice low. You think this is empathy? A gift? It's an anomaly, a biological risk. Left unchecked, it could fracture your mind. Or, Eli said calmly, it could heal someone else's. He gestured toward the empty cot. There was a boy in that bed, abandoned. You didn't even know he existed. But I found him, felt him, and now he's alive because of it. Mercer took a step closer. This isn't about one boy. No, Eli agreed. It's about all of them. His voice rose. All the M's, all the Angelas, all the Jordans. People you call unstable, lost, broken. But they're not. They're waiting. To be seen, to be heard. Maggie's heart pounded. The agents looked between Mercer and the boy, uncertain now. Some of them moved their weapons down. Mercer noticed. His voice hardened. You think you can turn this into a moral crusade? You're just a child. Eli smiled sadly. So were they. That hit harder than any scream. Mercer didn't reply. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled out a small injector. One step forward, but Maggie was faster. She stepped in front of her son, eyes blazing. You come near him again, she said, voice shaking, and I will make the world remember your name for all the wrong reasons. For a long second, no one breathed. Then Mercer lowered the injector and walked away. The agents followed, silently, leaving only dust and the echo of bootsteps behind them. Later, as morning crept into the ruins, Maggie, Halden, Eli, and Jordan stood just outside the building, wrapped in blankets. The sun hit Jordan's face. His eyes fluttered, opened. He looked at Eli and smiled. Eli returned the smile. Welcome back, he whispered. That afternoon, they drove away from the city. No sirens, no helicopters, no fear, just the open road and possibilities. Eli sat beside his mother, his hand in hers. He didn't know where they'd go next, only that he would go. To anyone still waiting in the dark. Because now he understood. He wasn't a monster, he was a signal, and somewhere out there, someone was still listening.